Deep inside the whispering woods, there stood an old, forgotten house. The trees around it were tall and twisted, their branches like bony fingers reaching for the sky. The house itself was a dark shadow against the clouds. Its windows were like empty eyes, always watching. Paint peeled from the walls like sunburnt skin. A crooked porch sagged, and the front door was a dark mouth, always slightly open. It was a place that looked like it held its breath, waiting for something to happen. The wind always seemed to whisper secrets as it blew through the leaves of the ancient trees. The local people had a name for it, the House of No Return. They told stories about it, hushed tales shared around warm fires on cold nights. They said the house was hungry. They said it waited for curious visitors. The legend was simple and terrifying. Anyone who dared to step inside the mansion would never be seen again. They would simply vanish, swallowed by the shadows within its walls. Some folks claimed they heard strange noises coming from the woods on moonless nights. Faint cries for help, carried on the wind from the direction of the old house. Years ago, a group of teenagers, much like any other, had vanished near the mansion. They were last seen heading into the whispering woods, laughing and joking. Their bicycles were found leaning against a tree at the edge of the forest, but the teenagers themselves were gone. No footprints, no clues, nothing. It was as if the earth had opened up and taken them. The story became a warning, a spooky tale to scare children into staying close to home after dark. The House of No Return was not just a story. It was a real and scary place. The mansion sat on a hill, overlooking the town from a great distance. On clear days, you could just barely see its dark shape. But on stormy nights, like the one that was brewing now, it disappeared completely into the fog and rain. The house seemed to call out to the adventurous, a silent challenge to those who thought they were brave enough. It was a place of mystery, wrapped in layers of scary stories and local legends, and tonight, its silent call was about to be answered by a new group of curious souls. 4 friends sat huddled in Liam's garage, listening to the rain beat against the roof. There was Liam, the leader of the group, always looking for an adventure. Next to him was Maya, who was brave, but also the most sensible. Then there was Sam, who loved scary stories more than anyone, even if they made him jump. And finally, there was Chloe, who was easily scared, but never wanted to be left out of the fun. The thunder rumbled outside, shaking the windows and making the lights flicker. It was the perfect night for a spooky story. Or maybe something more. "I bet you're all too scared to do it," Liam said with a grin, his eyes sparkling with mischief. He leaned forward, his voice a low whisper. "I'm talking about the House of No Return, the old mansion in the woods." Sam's eyes widened with excitement, while Chloe hugged her knees a little tighter. Maya just rolled her eyes, but she was listening closely. The legend was known to all of them, a ghost story that was part of their town's spooky history. They had all heard the tales of the people who went in, but never came out. "No way, Liam," Chloe said, her voice trembling just a little. "People have disappeared there. It's not just a story." Sam, however, was intrigued. "Think about it. What if we were the ones to finally solve the mystery? We could be famous," he exclaimed. The idea hung in the air, mixing with the smell of rain and the sound of the storm. It was a silly, dangerous thought, but on a night like this, it felt thrilling and possible. The storm outside made the world feel strange and magical. Liam stood up, grabbing 4 flashlights from a shelf. "It's just a dare," he said, tossing a flashlight to each of them. "We'll just peek inside. 5 minutes, that's it. What's the worst that could happen?" Maya hesitated for a moment, then sighed and caught her flashlight. She knew it was a bad idea, but a part of her was curious too. With a shared look of nervous excitement, the 4 friends pulled on their raincoats, zipped them up, and stepped out into the dark, stormy night, their flashlights cutting weak beams through the pouring rain. The walk through the whispering woods was eerie. Rain dripped from the leaves, sounding like quiet footsteps following them. Branches, tossed by the wind, scraped against each other with a screeching sound. Every clap of thunder made them jump. After what felt like hours, they finally saw it, the House of No Return. It was even scarier up close. The front door was open just a crack, inviting them into the darkness. They stood on the sagging porch, their hearts pounding in their chests. The air was cold, and it smelled like dust and damp earth. "Okay, 5 minutes," Liam whispered, his voice less confident than before. He pushed the heavy wooden door, which groaned open with a loud, long creak. One by one, they stepped inside, their flashlight beams dancing across a huge, empty hall. Thick cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly decorations, and a layer of dust covered everything. A grand staircase led up into the darkness of the second floor. The silence inside was heavy, much louder than the storm they had left behind. It was a silence that felt like it was listening to them. They explored the main hall, their sneakers making soft sounds on the dusty floorboards. They pointed their flashlights at faded portraits on the walls, their painted eyes seeming to follow their every move. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind howled through the woods. It slammed against the house, and with a deafening bang, the heavy front door swung shut. The sound echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. A thick, rusty lock on the inside of the door fell into place with a loud, final click. They were trapped. Panic set in. Liam rushed to the door and pulled on the large, cold metal handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked tight. "It's stuck!" he yelled, his voice filled with fear. Sam and Chloe tried to help, but the door was solid and unmoving. They were locked inside the house of no return, just as the legends warned. The storm raged outside, its fury now seeming to mock them. The fun dare had turned into a real nightmare. They were alone in the dark, with no way out. A new sound began to fill the silence, a soft whispering. It was so quiet at first that they thought it was just the wind, but it grew louder, seeming to come from all around them. The whispers were not in any language they knew. They were just sounds, like secrets being shared in the darkness. The voices swirled around the grand hall, rising and falling. "What is that?" Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with terror as she huddled close to Maya. Sam aimed his flashlight into the dark corners of the room, but he could see nothing there. The whispers grew into faint, ghostly voices. "Welcome," one seemed to say. "So glad you could join us," another hissed from the top of the stairs. The friends stood frozen in the middle of the hall, their flashlights shaking in their hands. The voices were not angry or mean. They sounded lonely and almost happy. The friends tried to find another exit, checking the windows, but they were all boarded up from the outside. Every time they moved, the whispers followed them, a chorus of ghostly sounds echoing from the walls. "We have to stay together," Maya said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. They decided to stick to the main hall, too afraid to explore the dark rooms or go up the creaking staircase. But the voices kept getting clearer. "Don't be scared," a childlike voice whispered from right behind Sam. He yelped and spun around, but there was no one there. The friends backed into a circle, their flashlights pointed outward like shields. The mansion was playing with them, turning their fear into a terrifying game. Then the main voice spoke, clear and close. "You don't need to leave," it whispered warmly. "You can stay here with us. We get so lonely." Liam, Maya, and Chloe looked at each other in horror, but Sam slowly lowered his flashlight. A strange, calm smile spread across his face. "They're just lonely," he said softly, his voice sounding distant. "They're our friends." He turned to the others, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Don't you want to stay and play with us? Forever?" The other three friends finally understood the legend. People didn't disappear, they were invited to stay, and Sam had just accepted the invitation.